Hello, hi. This is me, Alka Rajimon from Go School, your biology tutor. Yes, we are the fastest growing at Chicken GCC, and our aim is to provide quality education for all. Welcome back to yet another session. Today we'll be having a new session with SQP 2025. Yes, we'll be discussing SQP 24-25 with biology portions. Yes, we are here with the cutouts of biology questions and the solved answers along with the weightage distribution for each and every answer. So if you haven't gone through the SQP from CBSE 24-25, this is the session for you. Please stay up with us for the upcoming 1 hour, and yeah, it will be useful. Anyways, as we have already gone through each and every chapter's revisions by now, we'll be discussing the sample question papers, previous year question papers, and everything that is important for your board exams from this week onwards. For the new year, we have this new plan which will be useful for the board students, the board exams. Okay. So yeah, without wasting much time, let me get into the session. And as you already know, SQP or the sample question paper is basically a mini, it's like a mini model of the real board exams question paper. So if you have already solved one or two SQP, you would have gotten into an idea of how a real board exams question paper would look like. So going through almost all the year's question paper will definitely help you in your board exams preparation, and also it will give you an idea regarding how to manage the time, how to take care of each and every section, and how much time you should spend with each and every session. So it's always best to go through the SQPs, maybe PYQs. So if possible, go through the SQPs because they'll give you idea regarding the time management along with the session management, which section to attend first, which one to leave for the last. So you will get to have a clear idea before getting into your exam hall. Okay. So I think you all are there, and it's audible, right? Okay, so let's begin the session with the first part. The first part of your question paper will always have section A, which is made up of 1 mark questions. So they're basically the MCQs, right? I think you know that better than me. So it will be the MCQs, and as you can see here, this section A, question 1 to 16, 1 to 16, it's made up of multiple choice questions, MCQ questions. And out of these MCQ questions, there would be a part of assertion and reasoning too, which will also come under the section A, which is assertioning and reasoning kind of question, where you just have to pick out one option, right? So assertion and reasoning plus the MCQ comes under the first part, that is section A with 1 mark question. So let's go through the first biology questions which are given in the 24-25. 2024-2025 years SQP. So the first question in the question paper is this: during cellular oxidation of glucose, ATP is produced along with the formation of other products. In this reaction, which of the following events is associated with the production of maximum ATP molecules per molecule of glucose during the process synthesis of dash? So they're just asking, there are different types of respiration that we are learning in the chapter life process, right? So in the life process chapter, we are learning about anaerobic and aerobic respiration. So here they're just highlighting into that particular area of discussion where cellular oxidation of glucose, it can happen in any way. It can happen in the presence of oxygen, lack of oxygen, maybe without oxygen, maybe with less amount of oxygen. It is possible with or without oxygen oxidation, with or without oxidation respiration can happen. So here in the question they're asking cellular oxidation of glucose, which is burning of glucose in the presence of oxygen, when it is happening, where will be the maximum ATP molecule production happening? So ethanol in yeast, this happens in the absence of oxygen, right? It is an anaerobic respiration method, so that cannot be an option at all. Then lactic acid in muscle cell, it is also an anaerobic kind of respiration where the oxygen would be very less. There would be lacking of oxygen, not absence, but still oxygen would be lacking, not quite sufficient for the process to happen. And then carbon dioxide in yeast cell. So yeast is not at all an example for aerobic respiration. They're asking about the cellular oxidation of glucose. And the remaining option is carbon dioxide in human cell. And as we know, in human cells, the glucose will be converted into pyruvate during the aerobic respiration. And this pyruvate will become a water molecule plus a carbon dioxide molecule, and a lot of ATP, a lot of energy would be produced there. So the maximum amount of ATP production can be seen in aerobic respiration in human cells, and the answer is carbon dioxide in human cells. Okay, the second question, during which of the following stages of circulation of blood in a normal human being, the oxygenated blood is pumped to all parts of the body? So I think we have already gone through the chapter life process, and we have learned a lot about heart and pumping of blood and everything. So if this is the heart and we are dividing it into the left and right part, as you already know, it is the left part which will be having the oxygenated blood, and the right part will have all the deoxygenated blood which should be taken to the lungs to oxygenate. And from the left side of the heart, where we can see the, or where the oxygenated blood is available, from there the major artery, that is the aorta, would take this oxygenated blood to different parts of the body, right? So the question is, the oxygenated blood is pumped to all parts of the body. So they're asking from where this is happening. So it is obviously clear here, that is, it is during the contraction of this left ventricle. When the left ventricle is contracting or getting squished, the blood from the left ventricle, which is full of oxygen, it's an oxygenated good blood. So that blood would be pumped to the aorta, and aorta would carry it to different body parts, and that is how blood is being pumped to different parts of your body. So it is the contraction of the left ventricle which would cause this passage of blood. And yeah, you can see contraction of left atrium, no. Contraction of left ventricle, yes. So the answer is B. And then next question is, which of the following adaptations in herbivores help in digestion of cellulose? Cellulose, so as you already know, cellulose is a content, it's a chemical that you can see in the cell wall of the plants, right? So whenever a herbivore is having a grass as its food, it should get digested in its alimentary canal. And if it is a herbivorous animal, the herbivorous animal need a very long small intestine so that the cellulose can digest to its extent. So a longer small intestine is the answer for that. And a better way to differentiate a carnivorous animal and a herbivorous animal is the length of its alimentary canal, especially the small intestinal area where the digestion is happening to its max. Okay, then next MCQ is, there was a cerebellar dysfunction in a patient. Which of the following activity will get disturbed in this patient as a result of this? So that's from the control and coordination part, right? This is from the control and coordination part of biology. And we have already learned that brain is basically classified into three parts. The brain can be classified into three parts. We have the forebrain, we have the midbrain, and we have the hindbrain, right? And hindbrain again constitutes of pons, medulla, and cerebellum. So pons, medulla, and cerebellum are the parts of the hindbrain. So they're asking about this particular part in the cerebellum. If there is a cerebellar dysfunction, if something is happened, it's something has happened to the cerebellar region of the brain, and what activity of the body would get arrested or get dysfunctioning could be seen. So it's nothing other than the posture and balance. It's a very direct question from the textbook. So we have already learned that it's a hindbrain's cerebellar part which is carrying the posture of your body, how you stand, how you sit, how you walk in a straight line. It's all being controlled by the cerebellar part of your hindbrain. And if you're talking about the forebrain part, which is constituting the cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus, they take care of the voluntary actions. They take care of the voluntary actions. But it is the mid and the hindbrain which is taking care of the involuntary actions. And talking about cerebellum specifically, it's a part which is taking care of the posture and balance of your body. So the answer is C, without a doubt. Then this is a question from your heredity chapter. It's from your heredity chapter. This is the question. In snails, individuals can begin life as male. Depending on environment conditions, they can become female as they grow. This is because dash. So in the chapter, in the particular chapter, there is a session where we are actually learning about sex determination in human beings, and then there is sex determination in sex determination done by the environment. It's from the reproduction, right? And then they're asking a question regarding the snail's genetic constitution, how their sex is being determined, whether it is in their gene or is environment detecting the factor. So the options are: male snails have dominant genetic makeup, female snails have dominant genetic makeup, expression of sex chromosome can change in a snail's lifetime, sex is not genetically determined in snail. So it's obviously the option D, because we know other thing in the particular chapter, sex determination human being. So under that particular heading, we are learning that the X and Y sperms are detecting the sex of a baby in humans, while we go to the organisms like the snails, turtles and all, environmental factors like maybe temperature or the number of males and females in the colony can determine their sex. So that comes under the snail's example. So sex is not genetically determined in snail, because that is environmentally controlled. That's the answer. So it is option D. Identify the incorrect statement. That's the next question. Identify the incorrect statement. Again, this is a direct question, you can say, but still they have somehow tried to make it into a tricky way. So once you read it, you will get it. The energy available to the producers is maximum. The energy available to the producers is maximum. So I hope who the producers, who the consumers are and all. So producers are the ones who we call as the green plants or the planktons, you can say, right? So the green plants, planktons, uh, especially the phytoplanktons, they all are coming under the heading producers. So these producers, some statement regarding them, their characteristic is given, and we have to find the incorrect statement. We have to find the incorrect statement. So let's read. It is the first trophic level which absorbs 1% of light energy directly from the source. That's completely true. Producers are the first trophic level. So if you're taking the pyramid, ecological pyramid, producers or the plants come under the base of the pyramid, because they are the first trophic level, from where every food chain, if it's a grazing food chain, all the grazing food chain begins from that first trophic level. So that statement is absolutely correct. It utilizes most of the chemical energy for its own respiration, growth, reproduction and movement. Yeah, that's true. Plants use majority of the energy it has in its body for its own metabolic activities, right? And then it utilizes 10% of light energy and transfers the rest to the next trophic level. There we have an issue. It utilizes 10% of light energy and transfers the rest to the next trophic level. And the last statement is it transfers only 10% of the light energy to the next trophic level. So it's obvious, right? According to the 10% law, let it be producers or consumers, if a a living organism has a particular amount of energy in its body, only 10% of its energy would be given to the next trophic level. Plants give only 10% of its energy to the next trophic level. 90% of its energy would be used for its own metabolic activity, for its own survival. So the thing wrong in the C statement is it utilizes 10%. It doesn't utilize 10%, it utilizes 90% of the light energy and transfers the rest to the next trophic level, and only 10% of the light energy will it transfer. So this statement is correct. So obviously C is wrong. This is the incorrect statement because it doesn't utilize 10% of light energy. It utilizes 90% of the energy and transfers only 10% to the next level. So that's the incorrect statement. This is another MCQ. Which of the following is not a role of decomposers in the ecosystem? Again, a direct question. It's a direct question from the textbook. So as you can see here, natural replenishment of soil, enrichment of oxygen in atmosphere, waste decomposition, breakdown of dead remains. So it's nothing other than enrichment of oxygen in atmosphere. All the other functions, they are the activities of the decomposers, and decomposers are not, they are the members of the ecosystem who are actually decomposing, degrading the organic matter. There can be fungus, there can be some bacteria, any microbes which are actually doing it are called decomposers. Okay. And then, yeah, in the remaining 70 to 17 till the 20th question of the question paper, which is also coming under the MCQ section A part, it's assertion and reason type of question, and we have got two questions for the biology. For the biology, there are two questions from that part. Let's see. So this is the assertion. Generally, the number of chromosomes in a cell and in a germ cell is not the same in species. So the number of chromosome in a cell and the number of chromosome in a germ cell is not the same. If it is a normal cell in your body, your cell will have a complete set of chromosomes. So if you're a human being, a normal cell, or you can say a normal cell of your body will have complete set of chromosome, means 46 chromosome. But if it is a germ cell like the sperm or egg, it will have only half of the chromosome, only half of the set would be there, and that is 23, right? There would only be 23 chromosomes in a germ cell. So that statement is correct. And this halving happens due to the meiotic division, right? We know that. Reason, when two germ cells combine, they restore the normal number of chromosomes in a species. Yeah. So, if sperm is a germ cell with 23 chromosome and egg is another germ cell with 23 chromosome, when they combine, they will create a zygote with 23 plus 23, that is 46 chromosomes in it. So when two germ cells combine, they restore the normal number of chromosome, and that is 46. So yes, assertion and reason are true, and reason is the explanation of the assertion. So it is none other than option A. Option A is the answer. Yeah. And then there is the second assertion and reason kind of question. Assertion is, if the lions are removed from a food chain, it will not affect the food chain. However, if the plants are removed from a food chain, it will disturb the ecosystem. And reason, plants are producers who can make food using sunlight, while lions are consumers. So to solve such an assertion and reason kind of question, you first have to find out whether both the statements are true or false. If the statements are false, you don't have to connect the reason to the assertion. So just find whether it is true or false in the first place. So if lions are removed from a food chain, it will not affect the food chain. That is wrong. Let it be lion, let it be a deer, let it be a plant, a coconut, maybe a fungus, anything. Let it be any small creature. If a creature, if a living organism, if a part of the food chain is removed, it will definitely affect the ecosystem. It need not to be a big animal, it need not to be a top tier carnivore. Let it be a producer, let it be the basic algae, anything removed from the ecosystem, it will have some or the other sort of effect on the ecosystem. So if lions are removed, it will definitely affect the food chain. So that statement is wrong. That statement itself is false. Plants are producers who can make food, yes, and the lions are consumers. The statement is true. Anyways, so the answer would be assertion is false and reason is true. Yes, so that will be D. A is false, R is true. Now we are moving on to the second session, that is section B, with 2 mark questions. 2 mark questions. So let's see. First question is differentiate between alveoli and nephron on the basis of the following points. So we just have to differentiate alveoli and the nephron. Alveoli is something you can see inside your lungs, while nephron is something you can see inside your kidney. And we just have to differentiate them according to the structure and location as well as their function. It's a very simple question. I hope you already know the answer. So we have to know the structure and location of it and their function. So talking about alveoli, in the case of alveoli, alveoli is nothing but a balloon-like or a sac-like thing you can see inside your lung, right? So inside the lungs, you can see this bronchioles, and every bronchiole will have a lot of balloon-like transparent, or what do you call, fluid filled sacs. They are the fluid filled sacs. These fluid filled sacs are called the alveoli. Alveoli. So they are the alveoli, and alveoli does nothing but their function is what? Exchange of gases. So if you look inside, or if you look inside an alveoli, you can see that this is the part where exchange of gases happen. Once you take in oxygen through your nostril and it is going through the pharynx, the trachea and bronchus, and it ultimately reaches this sac-like thing, which is the alveolus, and this alveolus is surrounded, that alveolar structure is surrounded with a lot of blood vessels, and the oxygen which is present inside the alveolus will be given to the blood, and any carbon dioxide available in the blood would be given to the alveolus. So that exchange of respiratory gases happen inside this sac-like structure, that is alveolus, or in plural alveoli. And then talking about the nephron, I think you already have an idea about it. Nephron is the structural and functional unit of our excretory system, or the kidney, right? So if you look into the kidney, there are thousands of nephron structures inside the. So nephron is nothing but a structural and functional unit of your kidney. It's a structural and functional unit of kidney. So yeah, it would have this cup-like structure called the Bowman's capsule, from which you can see a lot of tubes arising. A lot of tubes arise from it. And the first convolution is called the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, from which you can see the U-shaped or hairpin shaped loop, that is called the Henle's loop. This is the Henle's loop. Henle's loop. Yeah. So it has a descending and an ascending pump system in that. So that entire thing is called the Henle's loop, which will end with another convolution called the distal convoluted tubule. So this is the DCT, distal convoluted tubule. So from the Bowman's capsule, this is the Bowman's capsule. So from the Bowman's capsule, there would be a lot of blood capillaries inside it called the glomerulus. It's called the glomerulus. And the glomerulus would filtrate the blood, send it to the PCT, then to the Henle's loop, then to the DCT. And the DCT would end up with a long collection tube, which is called the collecting duct. So this would end up with a collecting duct. Yes. It's a long tubule, and that is called the collecting duct. This is the basic structure of a nephron, collecting duct. So the collecting duct would go to the ureter. The collecting duct would go and connect to the ureter, and the ureters will ultimately reach the urinary bladder. So that's how the urine is being transported. And yeah, now talking about the question, structure and location of alveoli, they are the balloon-like structures present at the terminal ends of the bronchioles in lungs. And talking about nephron, they are the tubular structure present inside the kidney, while function of alveolus is exchange of gases and the nephron is filtration of blood to form urine. So that's it. It's a simple direct question. But yeah, again, you should know all the topics in that particular excretion and the respiratory part of life processes chapter, so that you can answer it decently. This is another question from the B part, and as you can see in the question, attempt either option A or B. So you don't have to go for both, either. It's an all question. So you have to take either question A for the 2 marks or B for the 2 marks. So keep it in your mind, it's a 2-mark question. So the 8th question, list the steps for the synthesis of glucose by the plants. What special feature is found in desert plants related to this process? So there are 2 questions in that one question itself. So definitely it's a 2-mark question. So you can expect the first part of the question, list the step, will get 1 mark, and what special feature is found in desert plants will get 1 mark. So let's solve the first question, that is steps for synthesis of glucose in photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a process which is carried out by the plants, right? So in photosynthesis heading, we have already learned the major steps happening in there. So every plant would have these beautiful structures called leaves, right? So inside every single leaf, why is that? Okay, so inside every single leaf there would be the plastids inside them, right? There would be plastids inside them, and plastid is nothing but a cell organelle, and there are different types of plastid. So now, since we are talking about photosynthesis, I have to talk about the plastids called the chloroplast. So inside the leaf there are these structures called the chloroplast. So chloroplast is nothing but a cell organelle which is carrying, or which is having the pigment called chlorophyll. So there is this chlorophyll inside the plant. Chlorophyll is nothing but a pigment. It's a green pigment, right? So this green pigment gives the green color to the plant parts, as well as this is the same thing that is helping in the photosynthesis. So what happens? So if you look inside, a chloroplast, it somewhat looks like this. So it's basically a double membrane cellular structure. It would have double membrane. And inside which you can see this stacks of coin like thing. There are stacks of coin like thing, and that is called the thylakoid. So they are the thylakoids arranged one above the other, and they are also connected with each other through a cellular with a double membrane connection too. It's not at all important to study the anatomy and all, but still. And this liquid part of the chloroplast is called the stroma. So when the sunlight hits, when the sunlight, okay, wait, let it be the sun. So when the sunlight hits this particular part of the plant, which is the chloroplast, there an action potential arises, and it starts a cascade of processes, one after the other. Several things starts to occur inside this coin stacked structures, and that ultimately leads to photosynthesis. So the major things happening here is, so the major thing happening here is, okay. So the first and major most thing is the light. When the sunlight hits the chloroplast, what will happen? The sunlight hits the chloroplast. So when the sunlight hits, you can see that the water molecule which is available inside the plant, or you can say inside there, that particular structure, the coin-like structure, would split into hydrogen and oxygen molecules. It would split into hydrogen and oxygen molecules. So the sunlight would be received by this chlorophyll-like structure, not chlorophyll-like structure, by the chlorophyll filled structures, and sunlight would hit the water molecule, which splits the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, And then you can see that this light energy would be converted into a chemical energy form. So energy conversion of the light energy is another major event happening there. So first the chlorophyll absorbs the light, then it splits a water molecule. There the conversion of light energy to a chemical energy is happening. And then you can see that there is a major event happening at the end of all these process, which is called the carbon dioxide fixing. So the carbon dioxide which is taken in by the plant through the stomatal pores would be stored in the plant, and it will be fixed to a carbohydrate form, and it will be fixed to a carbohydrate form. So the carbon dioxide would be fixed in the presence of this chlorophyll, sunlight, and along with the carbon dioxide taken in through the stomatal pore, this thing would be fixed as a carbohydrate, which is like a stored food. And this stored food can be used as a fuel for the plant for their functional activities, for the respiration happening, to create ATP molecules, and all this would be taken in later. This would be used in later. Okay, so that's a small story about the photosynthesis happening, which you might already know. So for the question, you can answer it like this: absorption of the light energy. Absorption of the light energy by chlorophyll is the first step. Conversion of light energy to chemical energy is the second thing happening. Splitting of water molecule to hydrogen and oxygen is the next thing. And reduction of the carbon dioxide into carbohydrate is the final thing happening. So fixing of carbon dioxide or reducing the CO2 getting reduced is the final step. So that's how you can get that 1 mark. But still it's not over. There is one more part to the question. What special feature is found in the desert plants related to this process? So they're asking about what particular features are there in a cactus like desert plant, where when photosynthesis is happening, they are saved to a limit. So it's nothing other than, I hope you already know the concept of this desert plants having their stomata closed during the daytime. So normally plants would open all the normal plants would open their stomata during the daytime, take in enough oxygen or carbon dioxide, and they would use it for their photosynthesis, photo respiration and all. But in the case of desert plants, since they live in a very harsh condition with a high temperature, it's really, what do you call, it's very dangerous for them to open their stomata during the daytime, because a lot of water loss can happen through that stomatal pore. So what the desert plants does is they just keep the stomatal pore closed and safe during the daytime when there is sunlight availability, and when there is no sunlight, that is during the night time, they would open their stomata, collect maximum CO2, and fix this CO2 into a form, into an intermediate form, maybe some oxaloacetic acid, maybe some malic acid. So they fix it into a C4 acid actually. So the thing is simple. The desert plants, they open their stomata in the daytime. They open their stomata in the daytime. Sorry, in the night time. Stomata in the night time. And since they open their stomata only during night time, it is then they would take in the CO2. They would take in all the CO2 available around them. And the inspiration of CO2 gas, that rate would be very high during the night time. So CO2 would be taken. Intake of CO2 would happen, and then they fix this CO2 into an intermediate form of acid. They do not directly fix it into a carbohydrate, but what they does is they convert the CO2 into an intermediate form, an intermediate acid actually. And this acid is a C4 acid, that is an acid with some 4 carbon molecules in them. So it fixes the CO2 into a C4 acid, and that acid can be an oxaloacetic acid or malic acid depending. So they would fix it into that C4 acid form, and only during the daytime when sunlight is available, they would do the water splitting part of the photosynthesis, splitting of water, making of ATP. It all happen only during the daytime. In the nighttime, the only thing they do is convert the CO2 which is available around them, collect a lot of CO2 and convert it into an intermediate form. That's what they does. And this is a kind of adaptation that the desert plants have, so that they won't lose their water content. They're already in a harsh environment. They can get dehydrated. So in order to save the water to the max, what they does is they keep this tomato closed in the daytime. And how this is how it is connected to the photosynthesis. So when you're writing it for the 2 marks, this is what you can write. The desert plants take up carbon dioxide at night and prepare an intermediate, and that intermediate is actually an acid, a C4 acid, you can say, a C4 acid, and which is acted upon by the energy absorbed by the chlorophyll during the day. So during the daytime, they take in the energy from the sunlight, split the water, and they convert it into ATP forms. They collect that light energy into the ATP form and collect it. And this energy would be used only during the night when they're actually converting the CO2 to an intermediate form. So that is an adaptation you can see in the desert plants. Okay, moving on. Then there is this B part of the question, which is an O question. So you can either write this part or this part. So in the B part, it is from our chapter Life Processes. Explain the role of the following enzyme in the process of digestion of food in humans. So it's a very direct question. Salivary amylase, it is an enzyme that you need to convert the starch, right? It is an enzyme which can convert the starch into simple sugar, you can say. It's actually converting the starch into maltose group. So anyways, you can write it as carbohydrates into simple sugars, or starch into simple sugars. Anyways, then there is pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme which is produced in the stomach along with HCl and mucus. There is pepsin, and this pepsin is a hormone which can convert the protein, or it can break the protein molecules. It breaks the protein molecule. It breaks the protein molecule. Okay, one second. So pepsin is the one which breaks the protein molecule. So to be more precise, it is breaking the protein into peptone-like molecules. It's breaking the proteins into peptone-like molecules, not directly into the amino acid forms. And then there is trypsin in the small intestine, which should convert the protein into amino acids. They convert the protein into amino acids. And then finally, there is lipase, which is a lipid breaking molecule. So it basically converts the what do you call it? The emulsified lipids. It converts the emulsified lipids, emulsified fat or emulsified lipids into fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerol. So these are the major function of these digestive enzymes. Okay. So if you can write all those four, you will get half mark, which would be your 2 marks. That is 0.05 into 4. That's how the weightage is written. And there is this question again from the B part. It's a cartoon. So there is some sort of pesticide being sprayed in an agriculture field, and there is a pond nearby. The question is, what impact will this process shown in the image have on humans if they occupy the last trophic level? Explain. So from the question is very obvious that they are talking about the heading biomagnification. So biomagnification is the process that is being happened here, and we have to talk about how the pesticide, which is an inorganic molecule, so this inorganic molecule, what happens? The inorganic molecules, when they are getting accumulated in each and every trophic level, its concentration keeps going higher. So we can put it like this: if this is an ecological pyramid showing the plants or the producers, okay, let the producers or the green plants be there in the base of the pyramid. Then we have the primary consumers. Primary consumers are none other than the herbivores. the grass eating animals like deer, goat. And then there is the secondary consumers, right? Then there is the secondary consumers and maybe a tertiary consumer. And when you're checking the amount of concentration, suppose the producers, the plants got almost maybe suppose 2 ppm parts per million of that particular pesticide. Let the pesticide be DDT or 240, let it be something like that. Suppose it's a chemical like DDT, it's an inorganic chemical. And if the plants had 2 ppm concentration of that chemical, by the time the plants are eaten by the next trophic level, that's a primary consumer, this 2 ppm can get converted into 10 ppm or maybe 20 ppm. Its concentration increases. When that primary consumer who already has 10 ppm of this chemical gets consumed by a secondary consumer, its concentration again get multiplied. It can go to maybe 100 ppm, maybe 50 ppm, depends. So this is just an example. This is not an exact thing happening. I'm just putting it into words. And then by the time it reaches the top tier carnivores, or by the time it reaches human beings, or maybe the ones at the end of the food chain, or the dominant ones, the concentration would be so high that it can actually cause maybe some tissue level or cellular level issues to the human beings, or maybe that particular living organism. Okay, so pesticide is a non-biodegradable, or we can say that it's an inorganic material, and they keep getting accumulated at each trophic level. They are never getting degraded. As it moves from first to second to third trophic level, its concentration keep getting higher, and it persists for a longer time. It keep accumulating in there and it never gets degraded. Its concentration keep getting higher, and by the time it reaches the last trophic level, suppose in this question it is human, they're asking if humans are the last trophic level, what would be the effect. So suppose if humans are the last trophic level, the highest concentration of this pesticide can be seen inside that human which has already eaten all the remaining trophic levels. So that is about the biomagnification. So such accumulation leading to some sort of issue, that entire process is called the biomagnification. So yeah, if you're writing any 2 points out of this, you will get those 2 marks. That's the question about. Okay, now the section C, water is used by the leaves of the plants for photosynthesis, but rather than watering the leaves, you water the plant through the soil. How does this water reach the leaves of the plant? It's a very simple question. For 3 marks, you will have to elaborate your answer, because you can simply write roots take in the water and give it to the leaves through. And how you can elaborate the answer is that you can add on the point like, I think you already know xylem. Xylem is the permanent tissue in a plant which is actually absorbing the plants absorbing the minerals and water that the plant needs, right? And you can also add on the points like, see, in plants the water is absorbed by the plant from the soil through the roots, and xylem tissue of the root stems and leaves are interconnected to form continuous system of water conducting channel. So first point, you can talk about the xylem tissue and how it is absorbing the water in that unidirectional manner. Then you can talk about the transpirational pull. Transpirational pull is nothing. During the daytime, when the stomata opens, the transpirational pull becomes a major driving force of the movement of the water in xylem. So when the stomata is open, transpiration would be happening, and when transpiration is happening, that creates a pull from underneath the earth, so the water will move faster, move fast through the xylem vessels, through the cells, to the tissues of xylem. And then you can add on the point, evaporation of the water molecule from the stomata creates a suction which pulls the water from xylem cells of the root to the stem and then to the leaves. So basically the question is about how xylem is helping in water conduction. Along with that, you can add the point like how transpirational pull, evaporation, maybe the root pressure, it all how it is helping the water to move through the xylem, because it's a 3-mark question. You can't just end the question by saying about xylem. So it's better to elaborate it by putting on such extra points. So here you can see they are giving this one mark each for those each points. Only thus you will get that 3 marks. Then there is this C part question, which is from the, it's from our genetics, the heredity chapter. In a family of 4 individuals, the father possesses long ears and mother possesses short ears. If the parents had pure dominant and recessive trait respectively, calculate the ratio of genetic makeup of the F2 generation. Show a suitable cross. It's a 2 mark thing. It's a 2 mark thing. So it's a very simple question at the same time. So they're just asking if the father possesses long ear, let it be capital L, capital L, and mother possesses short ear, let it be small l, small l. And they are pure dominant and recessive. So they have given it as pure. So we can, without any doubt, we can say they are homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive. You don't have to confuse between capital L or small l. It is capital L, capital L. Then we have to calculate the genetic makeup of the F2 generation and we have to show a suitable cross. So it's a very simple question. You can start with a very normal monohybrid cross like of explanation. So the parental will be long ear with short ear. Their gamete would be capital L, small l. And if you're taking the F1 generation, this would give an F1 generation capital L, small l with long ear. So F1 generation would be capital L, small l. Our question is find the F2 generation and show a suitable cross. So we have to go for the cross fertilization of the F1 generation, right? So now we are going to do the self fertilization of the F1 generation. So to find the F2 generation, we will have to cross, to get the F2 generation, we will have to cross the capital L, small l with the capital L, small l. That is a self-fertilization. So you can even create a Punnett square for this particular question. So in the case of F2 parents would be capital L, small l into capital L, small l, and the gametes would be capital L, small l into capital L, small l. And you can actually create a Punnett square out of it, where you can show the male and female, and then the 2 types of gametes. One would be capital L, one would be small l, capital L, small l. So the F2 generation would be like capital L, capital L, capital L, small l, capital L, small l, small l, small l. And you can wind up the question by explaining what they asked for. They have asked for the genetic makeup of the F2 generation. So you can write genotype of F2 is equal to, we have capital L is to capital L is to small l small l. That is equal to 1 is to 2 is to 1. So always rewrite the answer part what they have asked in the question and give a suitable cross. That 3 marks, it's yours. It's a sure thing. And there is a B part for that question. If the father had short ears and the mother had long ears, explain what effect it will have on the ratio of genetic makeup in the F2 generation. Nothing will happen. If father had capital L and mother had small l, or whether mother had father had small l and mother had capital L, small l, either ways, the genetic makeup in the F2 generation would always be 1 is to 2 is to 1 with heterozygous and homozygous combinations. That's it. So this is how the mark is distributed. For the first part with a suitable crossing and genetic explanation, makeup explanation, you will get 2 marks. And the second question, there is no change in the ratio. The ratio of the F2 generation will still be 1 LL, 2 capital L, small l, 1 small l, small l. Then the ratio would be same. So if you say any of those sentences, you will get the 1 mark. Okay. And then the section D, it has the question with 5 marks. So you have to give much attention in this part, and it's always better. I'll always suggest go for the D or E part of questions in the first time. When you're beginning the exam, it's always better to start the exam with E or D part of your question. because that's where you need to spend a bit time. And it's a very simple question at the same time. Attempt either option A or B. So in this particular part of the question, you have to go for either A for the 5 marks or B for the 5 marks. Anyways, both are of 5 marks. So there is an image given below, and it's a banana plant which is growing in the help of suckers. These suckers are small plant stem outgrowth which can be separated from the main plant and planted separately, and they will grow into a new plant subsequently. So this is the question, and we have to answer 1, 2, 3, and 4 subsessions. Give the name and type of the reproduction that is shown in the image above. It's very simple. It's suckers, and suckers, it's since the reproduction is happening from a part which is other than flower, it is asexual reproduction. It is without a doubt, this is asexual reproduction, or you can also say it is vegetative propagation. This is a mode of asexual reproduction, right? Asexual reproduction, or you can say this is a vegetative propagation. So vegetative propagation means if the reproduction is happening from any part other than the flower, let it be stem, root, leaf, then you can call it as vegetative propagation. List any two advantages the farmer will have on using the type of reproduction mentioned above. It's very simple. If the parent has a particular character and we are doing vegetative propagation, there is lesser chance of variations to happen. So whatever character the parent have, it can be easily given to the offsprings too. If it is a high quality plant, that high qualities would go to the offspring, and in a lesser time you can create a lot of offspring. The suckers can develop from everywhere, so in a very less time you can create a lot of offspring. That's another advantage. And you can also say you don't need any pollinators here, you don't need any agents for the seed dispersal, you don't need any extra person there. Since it is vegetative propagation, you just need the part of the plant, that's it. So these all are advantages of vegetative propagation. Then the above plant produces male flower. Explain how this plant will be involved in the process of pollination. So if the above plant is having a male part, that means it will have a filament along with the stamen, right? It will have a filament and a stamen. So it will have a filament and an anther at the end, and this anther and filament together is known as the stamen, which is the male reproductive part of the flower, right? This entire thing is the stamen. Inside the anther you can see the pollen grains. So if it is a male flower, this male flower's pollen grains, the pollen grains which are inside, should go and fall on a female flower, so that a fertilization happens there and a seed develops out of it and an embryo can come out of it, right? So if it's a male plant, a cross pollination would be needed. We'll have to cross that male flower with a female flower so that the next generation can be produced. Next question is, why is the offspring of this banana plant not absolutely identical to the parent plant? So unlike the vegetative propagation, when cross pollination is happening, when it is a male and female flower thing, when crossing is happening, there is a chance of variation to happen. So there would be a male flower and there would be a female flower, which female flower. So when we are making the pollen grain of the male fall on the stigma of the female, the double fertilization happens and an embryo develops out of it, and that would lead to variation. Since it is a type of sexual reproduction, there is always a chance of variation happening in the new DNA production, which would create an offspring which might have characters that the parents didn't have. So that is all about, that question is all about talking about the thing variation. That's it. So this is how the mark distribution goes for that particular question. First, vegetative propagation or asexual reproduction. If you are using those two terms, you will get half and half, 1 mark. Then, what are the advantages of such asexual reproduction? You can say more crops in same time, genetically identical offsprings, flowering, fruiting, it would be very fast. No need to depend on pollinators. So that would be 1 plus 1. They're asked for 2 advantages. So if you are giving any of the 2 points out of that, you will get 2 marks. Then for the third, if it's a male flower, we need to do the cross pollination. The pollen from anther will be transferred to the stigma of another banana plant. using agents like wind, water, or insects. So again, when you're using the words cross pollination and the anther, pollen agents and all, you will get half and half marks. That is 1 mark. Then finally, uh, okay, the question is why the offspring is not absolutely identical. The offspring won't be identical because there would be minor changes or variation during the process of DNA copying when it is sexual reproduction. That's why the offspring would not look like the parent. That's it. And that was the A part of that question. So you can attempt either that part or the B part. So, the image below shows a developing fetus in the mother's womb. The developing fetus is connected to the placenta by the means of umbilical cord. The umbilical vein and artery runs inside the umbilical cord. So, this is the figure. And from this figure, again, it's a 5-mark question. And so, you have to answer all the 4 sessions to get those 5 marks. Again, it's a very simple question, unlike the other one. Name 2 substances that move through the blood vessel. So, this is a fetus, this is the placenta, and this is the umbilical cord. So anything that is moving through the umbilical cord, it can be food like glucose, the nutrients, maybe waste material from the baby like the CO2, maybe the waste exactly by from their blood to the mother's blood. It all can be written under that particular question. Second question is, if the placenta has less villi, how will it affect the baby's growth? So as you know, this villi is nothing but they are the finger-like extension. So this placenta would have the finger-like extension from it, which should be attached to the uterine wall. This finger-like extension would be attached to the uterine wall, where these you can see where this exchange of the blood or exchange of this waste would be happening. So let it be the gaseous material, let it be the waste material, it all would be exchanged at the villi. So if there is more villi, that means there is more nutrition for the baby, there is more oxygen for the baby. If there is less villi surface, that means less nutrition. And if the villi is less, the baby's growth would also be retarded like that. So that's the answer. The villi less growth. Name the region where the embryo develops inside the female body. That is nothing other than the uterus, right? Uterus is the part of the female reproductive system where the fetus would develop. Explain how this region is adapted for nourishing the baby. And uterus is it is an elastic bag. This uterus is an elastic bag, and there is multiple blood capillaries, where actual supply of oxygen, blood, all the nutritive elements needed for the baby would be happening. So the blood capillaries, along with 3 layers of tissue, there is 3 layers of tissue in the uterus, which would be providing support and a place for the baby to grow up. So these all things inside the uterus will be supporting the baby for its growth. That's it. And then the fourth question is, some of the fetal cells fall off into the amniotic fluid and can be collected by careful procedure. The cells were screened and found to contain XY chromosome. What is the sex of the fetus? That we already know. If the fetus is having XY sex chromosome, that is a male baby. And if it is having XX chromosome, then it is a female baby. Again, it's a direct question. So it is a male baby. And how is this prenatal sex determination misused? So even that part was also explained in the last part of the chapter, where they're talking about prenatal sex determination. When people determine it's a female fetus, there is a tendency for abortion. In order to avoid the girl baby being born, when people determine prenatal sex, they tend to have this female feticide tendencies are there. So it is to avoid that female feticide, that is killing of the female fetus, that prenatal sex determination is banned in most of the countries. So that is the misusing of prenatal sex determination. So yeah, all of those points, one, 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 and the final one, if the male child, 1 mark, and misusing 1 mark. So that's how the weightage is distributed in that part. And the last session of the question paper, section E, it is carrying a 4 marks question, and the question is very simple. Mohan and Rohit observed that the shoot of a plant growing in a shade bend towards the light, whereas leaves of the touch-me-not plant fold and droop soon after touching it. They were curious to know how these movements occur. So this is a part we have learned in the growth dependent and growth independent movement in plants, right? We have already learned growth dependent and growth independent movement in plants. So the first picture where a shoot of a plant is bending towards light, it is where growth dependent movement can be seen. When the plant is moving, growth is happening. And then this touch me not plant or the mimosa pudica, in that whenever you touch the plant, it just droops off, and that is not a growth dependent movement, it is growth independent. The leaves drooping doesn't cause any growth in there. So when we are studying the heading, this plant movement, there can be two types of movement. There are tropic movements and the nastic movements. So there are tropic movements and nastic movements. Tropic movements are the one which is growth related. They are the growth related movements. So suppose there is sunlight, a stem moving towards the sunlight, that is tropic movement, that is phototropism. If there is water and the root is moving towards the water, that is hydrotropism. And movement towards gravity, it is geotropism. Towards chemical, it is chemotropism. So we have learned all those tropic movements under that heading. While nastic movement is growth independent movement, you can say. They are growth independent movement. There might be some movement happening, but it is not related to any growth of the plant, like the mimosa pudica. So the question is, attempt either the subpart A or B. You don't have to attend A and B, either A or B. Then C and D should be attempted. So A, what causes the bending of shoot in the plant as shown in the figure A? So what is the causing of this bending? It is the tropic movement. Whenever there is light detection by the plant parts, if it's a stem part, it has a tendency to move towards the light. And the auxin hormone, the hormone auxin is also playing a part in it, because auxin is a hormone which has a tendency to move away from the sunlight. So suppose this is a stem and there is sunlight coming from this direction. Auxin is a molecule which has a tendency to move to the other part of the stem. If here is the sunlight, it moves to the other part. And auxin is a hormone which helps in the cell division and cell elongations. So when auxin is getting accumulated in the other part, there would be a higher cell growth in that opposite part, which would creates a bending of the stem towards the sunlight. You can see bending happens to that particular direction, and such a movement causes the bending of stem towards the sunlight, which is a phototropic, a positive phototropic movement. So that's the reason behind that bending of the stem. What causes the folding of leaves in touch-me-not plant? And in the case of touch-me-not plant, it's actually the water. There is electrical and chemical things. In the case of touch-me-not plant, were the touch-me-not plant. In the case of touch-me-not plant, there is electrochemical things happening. There is electricity as well as chemical signals. So electrochemical signals are taking part in such a movement. Electrochemical signals are taking part in such a movement where once we touch it, they senses that particular stimuli and pumps water to that area. So there will be the water pumping to that particular area of the plant, which would create that drooping of effect of the leaf. So it's basically some electrochemical things happening in there. Then compare the movement of the growth of pollen tube towards ovule with the movement shown in part A of the above figure. So in the case of pollen tube, as you know, it is a chemotropic movement, right? It is a chemotropic movement. And in the case of part A, it is a phototropic movement. One is towards chemical, one is towards light. And finally, compare the movement shown in the figure B with the movement of the body parts in animals. So B, it is talking about the nastic movement. As I have said, in the touch-me-not plant, there is this electrochemical activities happening in the touch-me-not plant, which leads to the drooping of effect. And just like that, even in animals also, there is electrochemical signals. When we are studying the neuron part, we know that the neurons produce electrochemical signals which would actually go to the muscles, and the muscles have some proteins in them called the contractile proteins, right? Contractile proteins, these contractile proteins would contract and relax, which would help us to move. So the neurons electrochemical signal passing, which would lead to a muscles contraction, is it's together creating movement in animals. So in a way, you can say that movement happening in humans and movement happening in this touch-me-not plant, it's almost similar, because there is that electrochemical signal passaging happening. So that's how you can explain that question. See, for the first part, it is 0.5 into 4 mark distribution. You have to talk about the stimulus, then you have to talk about the concentration of auxin, and always say that auxin moves to the shady part of the plant. That's how you can arrange that question for the 2 marks. Then the last part of the question, where you're talking about the animal. So both plants and animals shows electrochemical means to convey information. Unlike the nerve cells in animals, there is no specialized tissue in plants. So we have neurons, but the plants doesn't have any particular tissue for that. In animal cells, change in shape occur because of the specialized proteins found in the muscle, the contractile protein. While in plant cells, change in shape happens due to the amount of water in them. So that's how you can differentiate. Although touch-me-not and animals are having electrochemical signals, we have neurons, but the plants doesn't have it. And there is no such water movement happening in animals, while in touch-me-not, the water movement is controlling the drooping of the leaf. So that was the last question of the question paper. And with that, the question paper's biology part is concluded. That's it. The remaining SQPs and the PYQs can be explained in the upcoming sessions. So thank you so much for staying up with us. And I hope in the upcoming session, we'll be discussing much more SQPs, PYQs, and whatever is related to your board exam. With that, let me wind up the class. Thank you so much. Have a good night. This is Alka Rajimon signing off from Go School. Thank you.